All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our second virtual information session. This is in reference to our text amendment, Petition 2025-047. So we will go over some of the contents of it, hit some of the highlights of what's included, describe some of the process that we're undertaking now to handle text amendments with the UDO moving forward. But we've got some slides to go through with everybody, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat. But I will turn it over to Kevin to kind of go over some of the format and process for going through this presentation and take it away from there. All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. Hello and good early evening, everybody. Again, thank you for joining us for this virtual information session on Petition 2025-047, which is a UDO maintenance text amendment. As Dave said, I'm Kevin May. I'm one of the planning staff working on this petition, and I'm joined by some of my colleagues in the planning department, including Faith Zisk and Mariah Wozniak. As well as that planning staff, we have staff from other city departments such as CAT, Stormwater, Urban Forestry, and Zoning, although I don't think Urban Forestry and Zoning are currently in the building with us, but that's okay. And they can chime in as needed should that be required to offer any insights on some of the materials that you're going to see in a little bit. We're here to provide an overview of this text amendment, as well as some additional information and resources. And to that end, I'm going to drop now in the chat some resources regarding this petition that you can utilize going forward. As far as our agenda for this evening, we're going to go over a little bit of logistics for our meeting, touch very briefly on the UDO background. Again, then go into an overview of the text amendment, Petition 2025-047, what the highlights of the proposed changes are in that text amendment, as well as some snapshots of some other changes. Then we'll touch on the petition schedule, the resources, and go over any questions and have some discussion should that be needed. Next slide. So I know we're in this current age, we're all pretty familiar with online meetings at this point, but just very briefly, some of the meeting procedures for this evening's session. City staff will present information on this petition and the proposed text amendment. Please use the Zoom chat feature to enter questions or comments. Staff will respond to the questions either during or at the end of the presentation. Additionally, we will focus solely tonight on the contents of this petition 2025-047, again, our UDO maintenance text amendment. We're here to receive and consider feedback that you may have in looking over at the petition or the materials provided. Should you have questions that are outside the scope of this evening's presentation on the text amendment, such as other elements of the UDO not touched on tonight, you feel free to reach out to staff, and you can do that by email. And you see the email address there, charlotteudo@charlottenc.gov. So for those of you that may be new to text amendments, how you read them is, as you can see at the top right, any changes that are scheduled to be removed from the UDO text will be displayed with red strike through. Any new text will be inserted as red underline. Sometimes there are entire sections of the UDO which you will find have been struck and replaced, but in most cases it will only be certain words, phrases, or text. A little bit about the background of the UDO. It's Charlotte's first Unified Development Ordinance. It is the primary implementation tool for the adopted policies in our comprehensive plan, Charlotte Future 2040. It was adopted by Charlotte City Council on August 22nd, 2022, and it became effective on June 1st, 2023. It is very much a living document. We've had several text amendments in the past, and we will continue to have them going forward. Because as a living document, it needs to be updated and revised on occasion through those text amendments to maintain its relevancy, clarify intent, address new concepts, uses, or best practices. And with that, I will pivot it over to my colleagues, Faith Zisk, who will go over an overview of the text amendment. Faith?
Thank you, Kevin. As Kevin mentioned, this information session is a high-level overview of the latest text amendment filed on April 15th. This amendment is what we're considering our first maintenance text amendment. As many of you know, we've had several UDO text amendments since the ordinance was adopted. including cleanup text amendments and text amendments focused on more specific topics. Moving forward, we will have a more regular maintenance text amendment approach. This means we'll file maintenance text amendments twice per year, and those amendments could include both technical and policy-related items. The text amendment we're covering today, 2025-047, includes multiple items identified by both internal and external stakeholders, such as community members and the UDO Advisory Committee, known as UAC. This is the second of two virtual information sessions. The first one was held on the 8th, May 8th. Both sessions are the same material and format. So if you joined last week, you likely won't hear any new information during this meeting, but of course you're welcome to stay and listen. Following the virtual sessions, the next major milestone for this text amendment is the public hearing on May 19th during City Council's zoning meeting. And just a quick note, if you plan to speak during the public hearing, you must sign up with the city clerk by 1 p.m. On the day of the meeting or at the meeting prior to the agenda item. So now let's jump into the contents of the text amendment. The first change to note is related to sites with multiple frontages and was discussed with internal and external stakeholders, including at stakeholder workshops, both in 2023 and in 2024. Staff identified a need for UDO adjustments to accommodate sites with multiple frontages, as shown in the figure and images on this slide. It shows the Harris Teeter located at Central, the Plaza, and Nandina Street as an example of a site with multiple frontages. The current UDO language makes it difficult for sites that have multiple frontages on different roads, particularly with different road classifications. So to configure the orientation for back of house operations, placement for loading, deliveries, and parking. So staff is proposing new UDO language that allows for more flexibility for site design on these types of properties. This gives folks designing on sites with 3 or more frontages flexibility to determine the location of back of house operations and parking and the location of the front of the structure. These new standards can be found in a new section within the UDO, section 3.6. At the end of the presentation, I will share steps with you on how to review those specific proposed changes. The next text amendment highlight is for research campuses. Staff identified the need to adjust UDO standards for research campuses to facilitate life science campuses in Charlotte. Staff has worked with internal and external stakeholders to ensure we have a solid tool to allow for life science campuses, which included coordination with the UDO Advisory Committee, and both in February 2025 and workshops in 2023 and 2024. Staff proposing new use, research and development with light industrial, and have added the term life sciences to the existing use definition for research and development to help attract and facilitate this type of R&D facility. With the current language, folks must piecemeal different standards to arrive at this outcome, but this new use helps bring the pieces together for easier development and permitting. Ultimately, we think it's a great economic development opportunity and helps keep us competitive in the R&D market. The next highlighted item is office to residential use conversions. We propose prescribed conditions to allow for adaptive reuse of an existing office use to a residential use in response to conversation and coordination with the UDO Advisory Committee. We know these types of conversions are a challenge from the building code and zoning standpoint, so to help facilitate those conversations, we want to remove some of those zoning barriers. In the current UDO, we don't allow residential uses in our office districts, but we propose that if you have an existing office building that is vacant and you want to convert to a residential use, the language in this amendment removes some of those obstacles to accomplish that. The building code and permitting process will still apply, but the change helps with just that initial entitlements process. In addition, property zone IC 1 and 2, OFC or CG, located in an activity center place type on the policy map, may be converted or redeveloped as a multifamily attached or stacked residential development. The amendment recognizes that the office market is slowing and additional allowance may enhance areas of the city we've identified as activity centers long-term. So getting into more of the more technical or administrative side of this text amendment, we've adjusted some language related to applicability of standards within the UDO. The text amendment strikes accompanying appendices language related to North Carolina Fire Code to address project review challenges, and allows for more clarity around which code applies when reviewers are looking at different plans. It modifies applicability of frontages and introduces alternative standards for lots with 3 or more frontages, as I had previously discussed on that earlier slide. It updates applicability of landscape yard requirements in the N1, N2A, and N2B zoning districts, which we'll cover in the next slide. And it clarifies applicability of standards for green area, tree preservation, and heritage trees. And finally, it adjusts the applicability of post-construction stormwater regulations. So landscape yards here, as I mentioned in that last slide, the adjustment to landscape yards includes adding a landscape yard for residential development in the N1, N2A, and N2B zoning districts. We realize that in some instances, residential development next to an older or an existing use that required a buffer but didn't have one was a challenge. And we wanted to ensure that the residential development has some screening or buffering. So the amendment specifies the need to provide the separation between the residential and some other uses if the buffer does not already exist. In addition, we propose an adjustment to landscape yard requirements from an emphasis on place type to an emphasis on the abutting zoning district when it comes to the N1 and N2 zoning districts. As currently written, the UDO standards for landscape yards are based on an abutting place type on the policy map, which can be a challenge because there might be a conflict between existing use or existing zoning district on the ground and what's on the policy map. The amendment takes us back to the zoning district standard for adjusting landscape yards, making it clearer for locations where a business exists in an N1 place type, but it has been an operational business for years. Staff see the value in making sure you're buffering to the use instead of to a future place type. Buffering based on the zoning district is more of a standard that we had previously done and used, and it seems to improve outcomes over the years. This amendment also includes updates to a handful of zoning district standards. So what we've heard for some folks in the industry is that corrugated metal as a building material has come a long way. And we've identified certain zoning districts, facades, and places where corrugated metal with architectural design elements can be a useful tool when there are reasonable design outcomes. You could see some of those examples here in this slide. We also adjusted some language about pedestrian entry locations for multifamily stacked and attached, as well as back of curb clarification if a project requires installation of a curb. The amendment includes some proposed adjustments to a few general development standards as well. So we propose a simplified standard for accessory structures like sheds and accessory dwelling units, ADUs, by clarifying and simplifying setbacks to encourage greater utilization of accessory structures for ADUs. We've done this by eliminating the differential condition for accessory structures less than 24 feet in height, but taller than the principal structure. The amendment includes some updated parking standards related to parking area locations for non-residential uses, ratio adjustments for financial institution, retail goods, establishments, and clarifies the maximum driveway width between curb and sidewalk when no sidewalk is present. Finally, it allows pole signs up to 84 square feet and 30 feet in height in the CG zoning district. That concludes the text amendment portion of this presentation. Here on this slide shows some of our next steps in the schedule for the amendment, including the public hearing on May 19th, as previously mentioned. After the public hearing, we may file additional changes to be included in the amendment if needed, stemming from these types of engagement sessions, the public hearing, or potential revisions identified by staff. After that, we have the zoning committee recommendation on June 3rd and hopefully a council decision on June 16th. The red line text amendment in its entirety is available at charlotteudo.org. And we recognize it can be a lot of information and the text amendment can be quite an undertaking to digest. So staff has prepared a companion document, which is also located on our website that may help you better understand the text amendment. You can see where those arrows here on this slide are pointing to, where you can read the summary of the proposed changes. And this summary is something new that we are trying to try to help supplement and digest the text-heavy text amendment. So we encourage you to utilize this resource, and we look forward to y'all providing feedback. And with that, I would like to open the floor to you and for all questions and discussions, and thank you so much.
Great. Faith, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't currently see any questions entered into the chat. However, we've got kind of a small audience with us this evening, so I would encourage any of those of you in attendance that may have a question or would like to offer some feedback. Feel free to please go ahead and raise your hand or come off mute and use this as your opportunity in this forum to go ahead and ask a question or bring up a topic for discussion.
Thank you, Kevin. I also can go back to any slide anyone would like to revisit.
One additional resource I'll mention, and I appreciate that, Faith, is on that same, if you would go back to the slide on the resources with the companion document and the text amendment. Sure. I'll also point out, as we touched on earlier in this virtual information session, this is the second of the 2 scheduled virtual information sessions, our last one being on noon on last Thursday. If you'd like an opportunity to review that virtual information session, there were some questions and discussion about some of the topics in the text amendment. A link to a recording of that virtual information session is available at this very same resources page that Faith has showed you here, basically in the same section that you can find the proposed text amendment as well as the summary companion document.
Hello, this is Ronald Ross. How are we doing?
Hello.
Very good, Ronald. Yourself?
Good, good. Just a quick question here. What is the availability of staff to share and discuss this information with community members? As you mentioned, it's a lot of information and it's a bit taxing at times. So what arrangements could be made for that, for community groups to access you guys to come out?
I'll tell you what, probably the best way to get the ball rolling on something like that, Ronald, would be to reach out to staff. And Faith's got the general UDO mailbox here, but I will go ahead and drop in the chat my personal email address, and
Okay.
you can use either of those email addresses to reach out to staff. And we can start those discussions. And again, your point's very well taken. It is very taxing, and it is a lot of material to get through. And if you reach out, we'll certainly consult what calendars our staff have, and depending on when the event may be in the community, we'll see what resources we can't manage to offer and help communities and neighborhoods navigate through this sea of information.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Well, great. I appreciate everybody's attendance here this evening. Again, feel free to reach out as may be needed. My personal email address is in the chat, and you can reach out to that. Also, the Charlotte UDO general mailbox email is on the screen now. But by all means, we're not here to take up the bulk of your evening, so please feel free. I know a lot of us would like to perhaps go and enjoy some activities this evening, or perhaps have a little supper or dinner. But we very much appreciate your attendance this evening, and feel free to reach out to staff as may be needed on this text amendment. Thank you so much for being here today, this evening.
Yep. Kevin, real quick, we had one last question about sharing the slides. Is the presentation on the UDO website?
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that, Roy. Yeah, as a matter of fact, not only is there a link to the virtual information session last week, in the coming days, there will be a link to a recording for this evening's session, but you will also find that, yes, there is the PDF of the slide deck that you've seen this evening available on the UDO website in that resources section that Faith shared with you. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I just saw that pop up as we were wrapping up, so appreciate you responding to that one. I think that's it.
Very good, guys. Thanks again. You all enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.